Welcome to another exercise for the workbook statistics. This time I'm going to focus on measures of central tendency, and that's in particular on the calculation of quantiles or percentiles for using a different term. Here we simply have calculate for the following data sets the third quartile as well as the 29% and the 87% percentile. Now we have those 6 different data sets to work with. So let's work through them step by step, starting with the first. Here we have the data set for the first exercise, which we're going to order in an ascending fashion, starting from the smallest going to the largest value. Then, based on this data set, we can start with the first statistic, which is the third quartile. The third quartile, which also translates to the 75% percentile. All these percentiles or quantiles we're going to calculate in a specific fashion, starting with considering this percentage value and multiplying it with the number of observations. So here we have 10 observations. Multiplying 0.75 times 10 gives us 7.5. Then those brackets on the left and right come to play. They mean I'm going to round up. I'm always going to round up. So 7.5 rounded up gives me 8. So I'm going to check out the 8th value in my data set, in the ordered data set, which here is 600. So that's the first of the 3 values I need to calculate. The third quartile is 600. Then I've been asked about the 29% percentile. So I'm doing the same thing I did before, but instead of 0.75, I'm going to use 0.29. In this case, I'm going to get 2.9, rounded up, gives me 3. So I'm going to check out value 3, which is 300. So 300 is the 29% percentile. And finally, I have the 87th percentile. So I'm working with 0.87 times 10 is 8.7. Rounded up is 9. And the 9th observation, that's a 700 here. So that was part A. Then let's continue directly with part B, where we have this data set. Again, we're going to order this in an ascending fashion from smallest to largest value, and we're going to start with the third quartile, the 75% percentile. In a similar fashion as before, 0.75 times number of observations. However, here we have 9 observations. 0.75 times 9 gives 6.75, which rounded up is 7. Checking out the 7th value gives me the 82 I noted here. Then I continue with the 29% percentile. That's 0.29 times 9, which is 2.61. Rounded up is 3. So this is 52. As the 29% percentile. Finally, I have the 87% percentile. So 0.75 times 9 gives 7.83. Rounded up gives 8. And the 8th observation in the data set is 85, which is here the respective percentile. So that's already 1/3 of the exercise. Continue with the third part, with part C. Again, we take our data set that is given, arrange this in ascending order, and start with the third quartile, the 75% percentile, by multiplying with the number of observations. Here, let's check out, we have in total 11 observations. So now we're going to multiply 0.75 times 11, giving us 8.25, rounded up, and it's always rounding up, even if it's 0.25, rounding up is 9. The 9th observation is 107.1. Then doing the same for the 29% percentile. 0.29 times 11 is 3.19. Rounded up is 4. And the fourth value in the data set is 9.6. Finally, the 87% percentile, so 0.87 times 11 is 9.57. Rounded up is 10. Checking the 10th observation, which is 213.4, giving me the percentile here. That was the third part. Then onwards to the fourth part. Here we have this data set, which looks in an ordered fashion like this. We can also directly say, well, we have a total of 12 observations. So for our third quartile, on the 75 percentile, we start in a similar fashion, calculating 0.75 times 12. However, at this point, the result is 9. Whenever the result is an integer, we have to do something different. We're not simply going to look up the 9th value, but we're going to look up the 9th value and the 10th value. So here we're using 24 and 31, and then we're going to calculate the average of these two values. Or in other words, we're going to add them up, divide them by 2, giving us here the end result for the 75% percentile. This rule we only use if the result, after multiplication with the number of observations, is an integer. We can see this with the second part as comparison. Here we have 29%, so we're working with 0.29. 0.29 times 12 is again 3.48. It's again an integer, so here we round up again to 4, take the fourth observation. So only in a case that the result is an integer do we have to use this particular process to get our quantile, percentile, so forth. Well, the final part of D is the 87% percentile. So we go with 0.87 times 12, giving us 10.44. Rounded up, it's 11. We're going to use observation 11, which is 32. Then directly continue with the fifth part of this exercise, part E, which here is the following data set, and looks like this in an ordered fashion. So for the first part, the third quartile, we're going to check out first. We have 9 observations. So we start with 0.75 times 9 gives us 6.75. Rounded up gives us 7. Checking out the 7th value, we get 400. Then we continue with the 29% percentile. So 0.29 times the 9 observations gives us 2.43. Rounded up is 3. And the third observation is 0. So finally we have the 87th percentile. So we calculate 0.87 times 9, giving us 7.83. Rounded up is 8. So we take the 8th observation from the data set. That was the fifth part, leaving us only with 1 to go. So we have part F. And with part F, we use this data set, which in an ordered fashion looks as follows. Again, the same procedure. Here in this case, we can check out again. Number of observations in this case is 11. So we're going to work with 0.78 times 11. That's 8.25. Rounded up is 9. So we're going to use 9th observation, 280. Then we're going to go for the 29% percentile, calculating 0.29 times 11 observations, giving us 3.19. This rounded up is 4. The fourth observation is 210. Then the final part, the 87% percentile. We are going to calculate 0.87 times the 11 observations, giving us 9.57, rounded up is 10, and the 10th observation in this data set is the 290. So what we saw from this exercise, usually it's the same process. Multiply the probability or the percentage part here with the number of observations, and if this is not an integer, then you're going to simply round up and check out the corresponding value in the ordered data set. In the rare case that the result after multiplication is an integer, then you're going to use the value at this position and the next one and going to calculate the average of those two. But those, as we've seen here, occurs usually only in very rare cases. So well, that's the final remark in this exercise, in this context. So I hope you enjoyed this session. I say goodbye and see you next time.